Valve. Apparently, Valve is getting sued by New York State. New York State Attorney General is suing Valve for illegal gambling. Basically, they filed this lawsuit yesterday on the 25th. We're recording this on Thursday night in Manhattan, alleging that Counter-Strike 2, Team Fortress 2, Dota 2, it's a lot of twos, no threes, loot boxes constitute quintessential gambling, which is prohibited under New York's Constitution and penal law. The lawsuit claims that Valve has made billions of dollars by letting children and adults alike illegally gamble for rare virtual items without significant monetary value, with significant monetary value. For example, I guess there was a Counter-Strike skin that sold for $1 million, which is, I never saw that, but that's bananas to me. But basically, because you have loot boxes, and then Valve doesn't allow you to sell stuff, but they don't stop you from selling stuff through third-party websites, it seems like there's some gambling going on. And so I have two questions for you guys. The first question is, do you consider what Valve does to be gambling? And whether you do or not, do you think that Valve should change something? So, Rich, I'm going to start with you. The first question, do you think that the loot boxes that Valve has in their games, with the ability to sell through third-party websites, because Valve has that Steam API, whatever Steam API it's called, do you consider that to be gambling?
Can you not also, can you not also sell on Steam Marketplace when you get like a skin, or can you only sell the key? Is that all?
So you can't get cash. You know what I mean?
Can you get like credit? Like what can you get?
I believe that you can get credit, but then it's like, I think it's like points or something. I can't remember because I don't do this stuff. I never. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you can. So like, for example, you can trade for keys, and keys do on third-party sites. Keys do have like a clear value, right? So like keys are essentially like a currency on the Steam Marketplace. And so there is some obfuscation, similar to like how pachinko machines have obfuscation. But to cash out essentially is pretty easy. Whether or not it's gambling, like that's certainly up to the courts to decide. It's almost not a matter of opinion, although like courts kind of come down to some like, decision that is some sort of an opinion. But my point is like, that's something for the lawyers to make their cases. I think when I looked at the research for this, there are let me see if I can find them, 3 things that New York and New Jersey use in these sort of rulings to determine whether or not something is considered gambling. One of them is consideration, meaning did people pay money for the object, or in this case, not the object, but the chance at an object, right? And so that's the second criteria is chance. Do you have kind of a known quantity of what you're going to get, or is it more of a chance that you'll get something versus something else? So obviously chance is associated here, and then prize, like how valuable is what you get. And for like Steam Marketplace, you mentioned $1 million, right? Even if we don't go that high, there is quite an appreciable range of things that you get. Likewise, when a lot of people have brought up trading cards, and trading cards trading cards have been sued before, trading card companies like Upper Deck, Fleer, even Pokemon. From my research, a lot of those cases were dismissed, but interestingly, the judges said in their like dismissal said that these constituted these elements of gambling, these 3 elements of gambling. Each case is different, but in the few cases that I looked at least a couple of them specifically said that, even though those cases were dismissed. So I found that interesting. So I think that, this is something that Valve has had to deal with throughout the world. And I think rightfully so. I think it deserves scrutiny, even if, it ultimately does get dismissed.
Russ, where do you think when you look at the idea that you can get these loot boxes and then you can maybe get something really valuable out of a loot box, or maybe get something that isn't worth anything? Do you consider that to be gambling?
I was gonna bring up Pokemon, and Rich already beat me to it, but like that's like what I was thinking about. Was like it's the scarcity model. It's like having this thing that's already created with this game of chance, because that's what it is. And not only
Hmm.
that, there's another layer to Pokemon, right? Because people are flipping them too, right? Where they're grabbing them
Oh yeah.
retail, selling them for more. They're making their profit, and then again, that person is paying for it. So there's a whole industry involved in that stuff. I I think it is gambling because of the way that it's a game of chance, and then also it just feeds that like kind of the same like ability to potentially be addictive as it does when with actual gaming. And so for me, that's the danger of it. I don't think it needs to be regulated. Like that's one of those things that's like, did they regulate Beanie Babies? Like that was also like a what I would consider to be almost gambling at some point. That scarcity model again. People are trying to get these things for the potential value. Comic books, like it's always been around. I mean, how many of us bought all those black bag Death of Superman comics back in 1992? Like I had so many of those. I'm like, here we go. I'm gonna use this forever. And so I don't know. Like I do think it is constituting gambling, but I don't think I think I'm with Rich where I want it to be scrutinized, but I also don't think that it needs to be regulated, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, the way I land on this is I agree with you, Russ, that it is gambling. Um, and the thing, like you guys bring up the trading cards, but it's not just trading cards. It's like you go into any store, any friggin' store at checkout. Like when you're at the checkout of a store, they have like blind boxes
Right.
that are
Yep.
at eye level for kids. They're aimed at kids, and it's like these boxes where you can buy like this thing, and it's got it like it shows like 8 or 9 different things that could be in the box. And like the kids are hoping, oh, I really hope it's this thing. But then, oh no, I got another one of these things that I already have 12 of. And I think I disagree with you, Russ. I do think it needs to be regulated, but I don't think it just needs to be Valve that gets regulated on this, because tons of games do loot boxes. And like when I look at a game like what's the basketball franchise?
NBA 2K.
Thank you. Yeah, NBA 2K. That has not like it has those packs that you pay money to open, and that's how you build your team for like the My Team or whatever it's called, or at least that's how it used to be. I don't know if it still is because I don't play those games. But like I think like that game should automatically be rated M for mature because of the loot boxes. In my opinion, any game that has loot boxes should be rated M for mature, so that when parents buy it, they're aware of what's in it. Because a lot of you look at a parent walking into a store, although how often does that happen anymore? They walk into a store and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to get the new basketball game for my kid." Well, it's basketball. I mean, it can't be, it's a sport. It's not bad. But then at the same time, in real life, when you watch a basketball game, they constantly have like DraftKings ads all the time, like all this stuff. It's like gambling is taking over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thinking of a few things you guys mentioned. So the scarcity is important, right? But I do think just going back to those three things: consideration, chance, and prize, right? Like when we think about a comic that's gotten really expensive, there's no like chance associated there. If you're paying $2,000 for
Mhm.
a rare comic, you kind of know what you're getting yourself into. Obviously, you know what you're getting yourself into to some degree with the loot boxes. But one of the things that like we Valve could do is be more transparent, or not just Valve, like you said, other companies can be more transparent about the drop rates for different, things, right? And so, but either way, these are drop rates. So there's a chance associated where you might get X, you might get Y, you might get Z. as far as like not just Valve, I don't imagine this is just Valve, right? Like this is a lawsuit that's brought to Valve specifically, but all of those things, what always happens is that whether Valve loses or wins, this becomes precedent for the next case, right? So if Valve were to lose, then the New York Attorney General has even more grounds now to come after, NBA 2K or to come after Microsoft in terms of like Activision Blizzard games. And then the ratings board stuff, I think that's important too. So there was a change to ESRB where they added a component that says like something about loot boxes. I don't remember if that changes your rating from a T to an M or everybody to a T. I don't remember, but that does exist. The thing is that came about in 2018, so it's possible that this came about after some of these games were rated, like Counter-Strike. Also, you mentioned walking in a store. These games are mostly digital or pretty much all digital at this point, right? So they have less of a requirement to be rated. So I think Dota 2 might not be rated. I'd have to be fact checked on that.
A lot of PC games are not rated.
Yeah, but you would think the Valve games would just be rated, right? But yeah, I think Dota 2 might not be rated. That said, like, in terms of regulation, here's the thing. Gambling is illegal in New York, right? Or at least New York City.
As long as you're not in the... unless you're in, like a casino. Like, they have casinos in New York, but they're only in certain places.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying is if it is found to be gambling and gambling is against the law, right? Like that's where regulation seems to make sense to me. It's already a law. It's already a rule that's standing. Now the question is whether or not they are breaking that specific law.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in the past, what I've seen is when companies run up against something like this, I've seen it like in other countries as well. Usually what they'll have to do, they'll have to pay a fine. Like in the past, Genshin Impact was sued for $20 million for misleading loot box odds. But in the past, I've seen companies say, okay, well, then we won't do loot boxes the way that we do them now. We'll show the odds and make them a little less flashy so they don't look so much like, a roulette wheel or whatever. And usually that's enough to get these companies to back off. And I think or these lawsuits to back off, or these regulators to back away. And I think that that's a good thing. I just also wish that it would force them to, if you're going to have gambling in your game, you got to have age rating. And that's for any game.
Another question I think that kind of goes into this is like, my answer to this question would be like, so should they exist? Like I hate that these things are there in the first place, right? Because it's a predatory marketing is the way I kind of look at it, right? Like the fact that they're even there in the first place, like it just bothers me, and I'm able to kind of keep myself away from it, but it still feeds into that weird like addiction thing that we have just as human beings, like this resource scarcity thing that we have from like the before times, and that we like got to hoard everything that we can find, And so my example of this is, so I don't know if you guys ever seen anything like this. So this is called a vinylmation. Have you ever heard of this? So these are like the first original loot boxes from like late 20s, so like 2000s, so like 2009, 2010 or so. So they were made by Disney. And so they have like a Mickey Mouse shape. You can see like the Mickey Mouse ears to them, but then different series. This is the Star Wars one, obviously. So it's Leia from Return of the Jedi. And you would get one of these and it would be an odd of, one of these is going to be of the 12 or whatever in the series. And then there's what they call a chaser, which would be like much rarer. And I don't think they ever put the odds on the boxes. They did that later with other blind boxes, My family we were kind of addicted, like we go to Disney World, be like, oh, we lived in Florida at the time, right? So it was just like, hop over there and then just grab something. And then it was like $12 each or whatever. And yeah, we've got like dozens of those things. I hesitant to say hundreds, but there's a lot, and it was just like a thing we did for months. And I had to stop because I was like, this is like making me like, I'm staying awake at night hoping that I get one of these things. Like that's a bad position to be in, and I think it's just a natural human thing. And so I've always been very anti all of this stuff afterwards. And so my question for you guys is like, is there any value to this other than the entertainment factor of like, oh, you know, like the thrill of the chase? Like, do you find any value in these things that Valve is actually offering?
I'm pretty hard, not necessarily just Valve. I'm pretty hard against gambling, right? So what has happened a lot in the last few years, for example, is that like sports gambling has gotten deregulated. And so you're seeing a lot more sports gambling ads. And when I see that, like, I just cringe. It's like, it feels off to me. It's like if we went back to having Marlboro ads and, you know, just uncritically, you know, like cigarettes are awesome, right? And that's how I see that. So I'm another kind of relevant topic too are prediction markets are like this new thing, but prediction markets are essentially just gambling, right? Except they've found a loophole such that like they're basically not under the same regulation, at least not yet, that gambling markets are under. And so like, yeah, I'm pretty much against all of that stuff. I understand that some people are into it. They enjoy it. I have friends that are into it. So, you know, whatever, but that's my personal stance.
Yeah, makes sense.
The way I look at it is, okay, so how do I deal with it? When I play games, I don't care what my character looks like. So I don't chase skins or anything like that. The only time I've ever like bought skins in a game was like when I played Guild Wars 2, which I was putting like ridiculous amounts of time into, and I wasn't paying anything. I was playing all the time, and it was never costing me anything. And I felt like I'm enjoying this game enough that I don't mind throwing some money at them. But it was always to buy a specific thing. It was never to buy a loot box. I'm very anti loot box in games. Overwatch was a big loot box thing, or a loot box system, and they ended up changing it to get rid of that, although I don't know if they ended up changing it back later. And I believe the reason that they changed it was because somebody somewhere had come after them. And here's my next question, and it's going to be a question that it's probably already posted in chat by the time I say this, or in the comments down below, is people are going to say, well, parents just need to watch their kids more. I don't disagree with that, but that doesn't mean that like there are parents who don't play video games that don't understand the systems. And maybe they're like, if I feel like when you're a gamer and you see all of these systems, you kind of get all of that stuff. And if you are not a gamer, like all of this shit on the screen just looks like, yeah, there's things happening on the screen. I don't understand any of it. And they don't know enough about it to understand it. And asking them to be a gamer on top of being a parent and having a job and having their own hobbies, sometimes that makes it really hard for people to grasp what is happening on the screen, if that makes sense. And some people might say that's a cop-out. I don't think it is. Do you guys think that people should just say, you know what, it's up to the parents, it's not up to the regulators to stop kids from gambling in these games? Rich?
Okay. Which Rich?
Rich,
Which
both
Rich?
Riches.
Oh, Russ, why don't you go first, actually?
Okay. So yes, theoretically, I like the idea of just like, yes, let society figure it out where we can shun the thing that doesn't work, right? You know, and I'm like the worst. And after my whole Vinylmation stint, 15 years ago, like I'm pretty crazy about it. Like I got mad at Astrobot when you you have your gold coins and then you got to use them to get the gotchas, to get all the other things. And sometimes it would just be like an empty soda can. And I get so mad. And I'd be like, why did I just pay money for the soda can, right? That felt like a gambling thing,
And he crushes it, right? Like he crushes it and throws it away.
It is in-game money. That is work. That is sweat that I put into that game that I then had to waste on an empty soda can. So yes, it's not real money though. So I feel like, yes, theoretically, like I can control my family, so why can't anybody else? You know what I mean? Not control, but you know what I mean? Like I can manage and take care of it. But it's addicting. It's naturally addicting to people. And that that makes people do things that they wouldn't normally do if they weren't in the throes of addiction. And so I don't like the idea of leaving that up to choice when it's something that the cards are already stacked against our, like the way our brains are hardwired. And so I do think that, yes, there should be some sort of oversight, being it a warning or whatever, but I just don't like additional regulation in a way, in the sense of like the amount of effort and work it would be to shun something worries me a little bit, just because that seems like a waste of resources. But I don't know. I guess I'm split on it, but I do think that it shouldn't just be left to the parents. There has to be some sort of solution. I think a warning is generally enough, but you never know.
Like if they're doing the loot box thing, just put a giant thing on the screen. This is gambling, so the parent can look over and be like, what the hell is happening over here?
Your child is gambling. You could send them an email. Yeah, I don't know what it would be, you know. I would want to say it's just a yellow sticker, you know, like put that sticker like you did on a pack of cigarettes, you know.
Yeah.
But everything's so digital now that I don't know if that could really work.
True.
Right. I do think, you know, man, a lot of things to say on this topic. So first of all, yeah, parents have an absolute responsibility, even with like, or especially with, digital purchases, to like understand what their child is playing. One thing I'll say before I go into this a little bit deeper is I would like more games to have better kind of parental controls, right? More games and more systems to have better parental controls. So like I use all of them, right? Like I use Microsoft Windows parental control because my son loves playing games on Windows. I use the console parental controls, and they're all helpful, but I think they can be a lot better too. And so I'd like to see that. What I'll say though for this specific case is I think it was a mistake for the New York Attorney General to even mention children in this, right? Because these are not, at least in the case of Counter-Strike 2, this is not a children's game. In the case of Team Fortress 2 and Dota 2, those ratings are a little more relaxed. But also the question isn't whether or not, in this case, isn't whether or not gambling is bad for children. It's already known that gambling is illegal. The question is whether or not Valve, you know, did what they're claiming is illegal, right? So that actually has nothing to do with children. Moreover, they kind of brought in like this question of violence once again, right? So like the violence can of worms. And so they opened that back up. And I think given that, like that really hurt, I think, their press release for this case and made it so that people are looking at this more negatively. I think it was a mistake for them to even mention kids. That doesn't mean that there should be zero consideration for kids. When we're talking about gambling, you know, casinos can't let kids in. As you guys mentioned, early exposure to addiction is even worse than later on, just because of how your brain is developing. So all of that needs to be taken into consideration. I just don't think it really had a place in this press release that the New York Attorney General kind of made.
I think it makes it an easy, I don't want to use the word scapegoat, but that's like, I can't think of the word that I'm trying. It makes it an easier target.
Yeah,
when
exactly.
As soon as they mention kids, and then bringing up the violence. Well, I think that another problem is that not every PC game is rated. And I know that there's thousands of PC games that come out like every day or whatever, and that's probably an impossibility, but there should be something that, like, Valve should put something in that says, hey, what do you think that your game would be rated? Be honest, or we're going to kick you off the store. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. It like, I think there are regions where games that are not rated are not available on Steam. I want to say Germany.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, I'd have to check that, but I want to say there's at least one region where games that are not rated are not allowed on Steam. And so, you know, we could do the same thing here. I don't, you know, again, I do think there's a responsibility on the parent, especially for game. Like, I'm not gonna, if I see a game that has 10 players on it, you know, that have played this game or have 10 reviews on it and has no rating, I'm not just going to buy that for my kid. sight unseen, right?
Right.
My child recently wanted to play a game called Wobbly Life, and I wasn't sure about that game because it kind of looked like GTA, but it turns out it's nothing. I mean, like, it has that sandbox feel, but it's otherwise nothing like GTA, and it's actually a really adorable game. But I had to see it with my own eyes, right, and see what was being played before I kind of give that opportunity to my child. So there is a responsibility there. I do think if we want kind of, a store force them to have ratings, then that's fine. I think one of the things I ultimately come to, and I'll close on this, is that, like, we have power, right? Like we saw with Stop Killing Games, that we have power, and that doesn't mean that loot boxes have to go away. But if we become collective about, like, what we think should happen, whether that is ratings or removing the slot machine animation, or better transparency, or better drop rates, or parental controls that work. If we are clear, specific, and collective about what we want, we can make change. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right. Let's move on to our next story, and let us know what you actually, before we do, let us know what you guys think down below in the comments. Do you think it's gambling? And do you think Valve should change anything? Do you think Valve's in trouble or not? Let us know what you guys think. So you just saw a clip of my podcast, the Nerd Nest podcast. If you enjoyed it, then do me a favor and click on that like button. And if you really enjoyed it, then check out the link in the description down below. It's going to take you to the full podcast so you can watch the entire conversation and a whole lot more. If that sounds good, I hope to see you over there. Thanks for watching. Stay rad, everybody.